After revolutionizing the wrestling industry and dominating the cable TV charts for almost 2 years, Turner Broadcasting took notice of the success of Monday Nitro to ask Eric Bischoff for another 2 hours of primetime television from the WCW product on Thursdays, as we're looking at the top 10 most watched Thunder episodes in its history. 3 days from the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view, Thunder was focused mainly on the final hype for the event, first with Dallas Page coming out for a promo, saying that this Sunday Goldberg will be next to take the Diamond Cutter in a match hyped by Page as the biggest of his career. After starting the first hour with a 3.7 overall rating, Thunder picked up big at the top of the hour, first with Luger vs. Riggs going 6 minutes, followed by video packages recapping the recent Flair vs. Bischoff segments and a Conan vs. Armstrong match. WCW opened the final quarter with another Havoc hype video for Sting vs. Bret Hart, followed by the Horsemen coming out moments later, closing the show with a Sting vs. Giant main event, with Thunder's second hour jumping over 800,000 viewers to a 4.4 rating and over 5 million viewers. After being off the show for the past 2 weeks, the top players of the Wolfpack were back on Thunder with a hyped main event of Hall and Nash against Rey Mysterio and Conan. Hall and Nash came out unannounced to continue to disrupt the tag titles tournament, telling Enos and Duncan to get out of the ring before being attacked to start an impromptu match, with the Outsiders returning 20 minutes later for the main event, going 12 minutes against Conan and Rey to peak the night with over 5.5 million viewers, before closing the show in another NWO beatdown to lead up to Monday. 3 days from a loaded uncensored pay-per-view, WCW had the final build-up for the top 3 matches of Giant vs. Nash, Hall vs. Sting and Savage vs. Hogan, all set for Thunder with several angles throughout, starting with Giant calling out Nash for tonight before Savage, followed by Sting walk to the ring, ending up with Savage and Sting confronting each other after Savage targeted Sting's title, setting up a massive Sting vs. Savage main event for later tonight. Thunder picked up big in the second hour, jumping from a 3.7 to 4.5 rating, first with Hogan, Hall and Bischoff coming out for a promo at 9 p.m., hyping their pay-per-view matches, with Hall making reference to the rumors of the legit heat between him and Nash to Hogan and Bischoff following the firing of Waltman. Hall and Hogan were back out 30 minutes later for an NWO vs. Giant handicap match that saw Nash showing up for the first time on the night, with the Savage vs. Sting main event ending in a brawl with Hall and Hogan in the final hype segment for the pay-per-view, as Thunder continued its run with a near-record 4.1 rating. In the first show since WCW's 83-week streak was ended on Monday, the company planned the response for Nitro, setting up 2 title matches with Hogan and Goldberg challenging for the World and US titles, while building the show on the continuation of the NWO split to 2 groups, with Nash, Hogan and Savage all cutting promos to build for the explosion on Sunday, along with a big star power main event of Savage and Nash against Sting and Bret Hart. Savage, Nash, Sting and Hart came out 12 minutes from the top of the hour and crossing into the overrun on TBS, with the tag match peaking the night with a 5.1 rating and over 6 million viewers, among the highest rated segments in Thunder history. With talks of him leading the committee going over 2 months back, Thunder on January 21 from Indianapolis was, according to Nash, the only show he had full creative control over, with him writing the entire TV script. The show was built on NWO Black and White and a series of skits complaining about them being the B team to the Wolfpack, with Vince playing the Wolfpack undercover to report to the group, including him telling the NWO to now call him Vince instead of Vincent, while drinking eggs, in another reference to McMahon during his Royal Rumble training skits going on Raw in the last few weeks, ending up with the Wolfpack watching the monitor from their limousine and a hidden camera in the NWO locker room in the building. The other big segment of the night saw Ric Flair cutting another trademark promo on Hogan in the build to their Super Brawl pay-per-view match, comparing their legacies and the business for the past 20 years, with the main event of the night seeing the Horsemen going over the NWO in a 6-man tag with Flair putting the figure 4 on Vince for the finish, as WCW continued its hot run in January with Thunder drawing one of its highest ever ratings with a 4.2. The build-up to the Sting vs Hogan rematch at Super Brawl along with the teased NWO split with Savage confronting the entire group on Monday, saw another twist continuing on Thunder with Scott Hall reminding Hogan and Sting that he's the #1 contender. Hall opened Thunder's second hour bumping the show to over 5 million viewers, calling out Roddy Piper saying that he's next in line for a title shot, before bringing out Dusty Rhodes for his first heel promo since joining the NWO, cutting a promo on management for making him a commentator followed by Hall going over Disco in a 3-minute match. Thunder's main event saw Nash and Conan against Trick and Scott with another hint of Scott turning on Rick during the match, ending the show with Nash getting fined and arrested again after a powerbomb on the referee, with Thunder drawing its highest rating to date with a 4.2. 3 days after one of the most memorable swerves in wrestling TV history with the reformation of the NWO at the Georgia Dome, the new Wolfpack were set for their first appearance since the turn along with strong anticipation for the response from Goldberg and Flair. Flair was out first cutting an intense promo on Hogan and Nash regarding their finger poke match, talking about the tradition of the title and promising to get them and Bischoff with a meeting with Eric set for Friday in the WCW headquarters, as Thunder already jumped over 800,000 viewers for the Flair segment in the second quarter doing a 4.1 rating, with the Wolfpack arriving to the building moments later all wearing the red and black shirts for the first time. The entire Wolfpack walked to the ring 10 minutes later for the first promo since the turn, with Nash and Hogan mocking Flair's tradition promo saying that Monday was the toughest match of their careers, before turning to Goldberg saying that they're gonna have a special backup group with them on Monday, as Giant walked to the ring setting up the main event for the show with Nash vs Giant in a loser leaves NWO match and what would also be Paul White's final match in the company, with the NWO segment bumping Thunder to a peak 4.7 rating at the top of the hour, with Thunder after WCW and off the air on Monday with one of the biggest audiences in show history, jumped to a 4.3 rating, its joint second highest rating ever and the biggest in 5 months. After breaking company records on almost a weekly basis since the start of the year, Thunder on March 5 was built on Hogan and Savage getting personal to take the feud to the next level with worked shoot promos back and forth throughout the night. Hogan opened the show with the NWO cutting a promo on Savage while setting up Bryan Adams vs Savage for later tonight, including Hogan and Bischoff taking a shot at Savage receiving the Harvard Man of the Year award, with Hogan saying that Elizabeth was once his manager and knows who the real man is. Thunder grew throughout the first hour in anticipation for Savage's arrival, picking up from a 3.7 to a 4 rating for 3 matches including Goldberg Juventud and Eddie, with Savage coming out moments later to bump Thunder over 700,000 viewers to a 4.5 rating, calling out Hogan and Adams for his response promo, saying that Hogan thinks he's the leader of the NWO while everyone is calling him just waiting for the chance to stab him in the back. Setting up the main event with Savage saying that after he's done with Adams he wants Hogan in the ring tonight. Hogan, Savage and Adams came out 8 minutes from the top of the hour, with Savage responding to Hogan's shot at Elizabeth earlier telling him that if he wants to know who the man is he can ask his wife. The Adams vs Savage match turned into a 3-way brawl with Savage taking on both before the NWO's interference to bring out Sting for the save, peaking the night with a 4.6 rating and over 5.4 million viewers, as Savage and Hogan continued the hottest feud in the business adding another record with Thunder drawing an all-time high 4.3 rating. With Warriors Wrestling Television return on Monday spiking viewership to one of the highest rated segments in history, the hype carried over to Thursday with Thunder getting a major boost jumping to its highest rating in over 5 months and the second highest ever overall. Knowing the increased interest on the night, the announcers hyped the footage of the return since going on the air, with the segment replay coming half-hour and bumped Thunder big with over 1.1 million viewers from a 3.1 to 4.1 rating, with the show continuing to climb in the second hour with a Bret Hart interview along with an NWO match and Draven's Flock segment picking up to a 4.6 rating. Thunder peaked with a 4.8 rating for a Giant interview, Curt Hennig vs. Mongo and Giant with Scott Hall vs. Stevie Ray, before finishing with another Warrior highlight video package in the build to Monday. With the Hogan vs. Nash NWO split now a matter of time, with both teasing turning on each other in the last week of television, March 26 saw WCW building Thunder on a hyped confrontation between them to open up all the worked and legit issues going on in the TV storylines and behind the scenes. Thunder featured a series of matches throughout the 2 hours, with the big segment of the night coming in the second quarter, as Hogan and Bischoff walked to the ring to call out Nash for one of the most talked about segments of the year so far, coming 4 days before Sean Waltman made his WWF return with a shoot promo on Raw. As with Scott Hall off television with personal issues and Waltman fired, Nash was isolated without his Wolfpack Clique buddies for the first time in years. Nash told Hogan that while he claims to be the leader, everybody knows that the heart and soul of the NWO is the Wolfpack, asking him why Six doesn't have a job anymore and Hall wasn't allowed on television, as knowing that Waltman already signed with McMahon. Hogan responded that Waltman was fired because he can't cut it in the big leagues of the NWO, turning shoot into TV storylines with the perceived legit issues going on backstage. Over an hour later, Hogan and Nash continued the build for the split, teaming up against Sting and Luger in the main event, ending up with Randy Savage running in and another Nash-Hogan confrontation, as Thunder broke all records, peaking with around 6 million viewers in the second hour, with the show overall drawing its highest ever rating with a 4.4. With the company booming in every department in mid-1999, SmackDown was the WWF's return to network television for the first time since the early 90s NBC specials, as after dominating the cable TV charts for the past year, SmackDown was an opportunity for the company to expand and reach a wider audience beyond the cable universe, as we're looking at the 10 most watched episodes in its history. After another twist to the Austin car driver storyline on Raw, with Rikishi turning on Rock claiming that it was him who planned to run over Austin last year, SmackDown on November 2, 2000 was built on Rock's response to the allegation, along with a Rock vs. Kurt Angle WWF title main event set up on Raw. Rock opened the show calling out Austin to the ring, denying Rikishi's claims, saying that everything he did to Austin was always face-to-face. With the Rock-Austin confrontation continuing the build-up to their eventual match at WrestleMania 17, bringing out Rikishi and Angle to stir things up, with Austin laying out Rock with a stunner to close the segment. The Austin-Rock angle continued throughout the show, with Rock not found in his locker room after a crate nearly fell on Austin backstage, with Rock teasing a heel turn and a different demeanor for the rest of the night, along with 2 other notable matches in Jericho vs. Rikishi and Triple H vs. Chris Benoit. Rock and Angle went 8 minutes in the main event, peaking at over 9.2 million viewers, ending up with Rock having the match won until Rikishi's interference, followed by Austin, setting up Rock getting Austin back with a rock bottom to close the show. Unusually taped a day earlier on Wednesday due to a blizzard in Baltimore, SmackDown was built on 2 major segments in the follow-up of the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. First, with Cactus Jack coming out for his response promo on the Triple H street fight at the Garden, calling him out to do it again tonight and bring out Stephanie to the ring, ending up with Stephanie slapping Foley, with him giving her another chance to do it again before leaving the building. Other matches on the night saw the Dudleys against Edge and Christian, and Kane vs. Big Show, with a post-match angle of Tori turning on Kane to join X-Pac and DX. Hyped throughout the 2 hours, with Hunter booking his 2 big threats to go against each other, Rock vs. Rikishi headlined SmackDown in their first match against each other since Rikishi got over big as a babyface as part of Too Cool to start the year, going 6 minutes with SmackDown going against a president's speech on all major networks, shattered all previous records with a 5.4 rating, the highest rated show in its history. In the middle of the company's SmackDown Your Vote campaign, with Rock inviting both presidential candidates to appear on the show, noting the WWF's over 14 million weekly eligible voters, October 5th saw Mick Foley waiting for Austin's arrival after taking a stunner on Raw when threatening to suspend Austin if he doesn't stop interfering in matches, hyping the Foley-Austin confrontation for later in the show, with the main event announced in advance with Rock defending the title against Kane. Both segments were saved for a loaded-up second hour, with Austin arriving minutes before 9 p.m., with Foley along with security coming to the ring to call out Austin. Foley told Austin after retiring and taking the commissioner role, his job was fun until Austin came back and ruined it, as Austin responded that fun for him was coming back to the ring and he's not gonna stop until he gets revenge, ending up with Foley suspending Austin to set up another stunner. Half an hour later, Rock vs. Kane main evented the show for the title, going 9 minutes before Kurt Angle's interference to lay them out, as a week after Raw's move to TNN, SmackDown remained at record levels with over 8 million viewers overall. 3 days from WrestleMania 17. The buzz for the show was peaking after the official announcement of Vince McMahon buying WCW on Monday in the final build-up for the Rock vs. Austin main event. SmackDown featured the follow-up of the Shane WCW storyline and the final sell for the pay-per-view card, including 2 angles for the Taker-Triple H match, with Taker getting arrested and Hunter throwing his motorcycle off the stage. Rock and Austin arrived throughout the first hour, with Vince trying to prevent them from meeting to not risk the main event, with Austin opening SmackDown's second hour calling out Rock to the ring after taking a stunner on Monday, getting Vince instead until Rock came out, with Austin and Rock going face-to-face for the final hype segment to the most anticipated match of the boom period, toasting each other before starting a big pull-apart brawl all the way to the locker room, with SmackDown not only drawing one of its biggest viewership in history with over 8.1 million viewers coming off the combination of the WCW announcement, the Rock-Austin confrontation and overall WrestleMania hype, the show also drew the biggest TV audience of the year for the company for a full program. With SmackDown coming from Philadelphia in good timing after a week of chaos for ECW, with wrestlers jumping ship and the belt changing hands multiple times, ending with the unique situation of a WWF wrestler beating a WCW wrestler for the ECW title. The WWF set up a crossover match between the companies, with Taz coming out on SmackDown to challenge Triple H for a match tonight in ECW territory, including Hunter openly acknowledging ECW on air during the promo, with the match seeing Hunter pinning Taz after also taking out Tommy Dreamer. The show coming 3 days after the announcement that Steve Austin will make his return in Rock's corner at Backlash, was building to a Rock vs. Jericho lumberjack main event with DX and all the heels surrounding the ring. Rock and Jericho went 7 minutes, with Rock having the match won several times until Hunter hit Rock with a belt for Jericho to go over, building the heat for Backlash, with the second hour headlined by Rock vs. Jericho peaking at over 9 million viewers. With Raw preempted on the day after the event, SmackDown on August 31st was the first WWF show in its regular time slot post the SummerSlam pay-per-view, featuring a show-long Angle continuing the Triangle program of Angle, Hunter and Stephanie, with the addition of Chyna and Eddie on the night. Angle continued to stir things up between Stephanie, Triple H and Chyna before Hunter arrived to the building, setting up Foley booking Angle, Eddie and Hunter in a three-way for the main event. The other major match saw Undertaker vs. Chris Benoit at the top of the hour in a #1 contender match for Rock's title, ending in a DQ after Kane's interference, with Rock running in for the save in his only appearance on the night. Hunter was taken out by the cops just before the main event to make it Kurt vs. Eddie in a singles match, as with Rock only making one unadvertised appearance. The Angle vs Guerrero match with the China's Stephanie Angle at ringside proved to be a strong attraction in the main event position, peaking the night with a 5.7 rating and over 9.2 million viewers. The final show before WrestleMania 16 saw all 4 main event participants in multiple angles throughout the night for the final hype to the pay-per-view targeted to break every record in history. Triple H and Stephanie came out in the second quarter with Hunter cutting his final promo to the Mania main event, before being interrupted by Vince, who added 2 stipulations to the match while foreshadowing what's to come, hinting at a surprise on the show, with Foley coming out next promising to take out Hunter and win the title in his final match to retire with the belt. The biggest match of the night came at the top of the hour with Rock against Kurt Angle going 5 minutes with Rock going over, ending up with all the main event headliners out and Vince and then Shane laying out everyone involved, with Big Show and Shane standing tall in the ring. With Hunter going into WrestleMania with the belt, the main event quarter saw Stephanie pinning Jacqueline after DX's interference to win the women's title, before starting a wild brawl with the entire roster running in for the WrestleMania Go Home segment, ending up with Rock and Foley clearing the ring to close the build-up to Sunday, with SmackDown jumping big with a 5.3 rating and over 8.2 million viewers, with big momentum heading into WrestleMania. A loaded-up card with all the top babyfaces facing DX and Radical's members was booked on February 10, 2000 with a different TV format than usual for SmackDown, also featuring the Dudleys vs Edge and Christian and Kurt Angle going over Val Venis to win the European title, before starting the hyped series of matches with the top 3 all saved for the second hour. Rock and Cactus Jack vs The Outlaws was first going 7 minutes in front of a hot 14,000 sellout crowd in Austin, Texas, ending with Foley pinning Road Dogg 17 days from the No Way Out pay-per-view. Rikishi vs Benoit was next before a Kane vs Triple H and X-Pac handicap match in the final quarter, going 5 minutes with a Big Angle coming post-match with Kane tombstoning Tori to a huge reaction from the crowd, with SmackDown drawing its second highest rating and biggest ever viewership to date. After a triangle show-long angle with Rock, Kane and Undertaker on Raw, ending with Taker accidentally costing Rock the title and the main event in the build to the King of the Ring pay-per-view, the McMahon-Helmsley faction came out for a celebration after eliminating all 3 title contenders in one night, just as Rock entered the building saying that tonight is not about the belt but about payback. Hunter continued to try to turn Rock and Taker against each other, showing Taker hitting Rock on Raw to bring him out, ending with Taker jumping the entire faction in the ring until Rock ran in for the save, with Taker laying him out again in the build to the 6-man tag in the main event. Moments later Rock went to confront Taker in his locker room before finding Kane, starting a backstage brawl, with SmackDown viewership consistently growing throughout the night, featuring several King of the Ring qualifier matches and a wild Rikishi vs Val Venis angle that saw him jumping off the stage. The Rock, Taker and Kane vs DX main event peaked the night huge with a 5.7 rating and over 9.9 million viewers, going 9 minutes with Rock laying out both Kane and Taker to close the show, as SmackDown shot up to its second highest viewership in history with over 8.6 million viewers overall. With the hype for Backlash at its peak 3 days before what is set to be the biggest B pay-per-view in company history, the WWF planned to keep the massive momentum rolling, coming after Raw 3 days earlier drew its highest opposed rating in show history. Rock arrived at the Charlotte Coliseum to open the show-long angle, saying that they're not waiting for Sunday, guaranteeing that Steve Austin is gonna show up tonight, advertising Austin's first TV appearance outside of the Halftime Heat special since November '99. After the big announcement with the 15 minutes Rock McMahon segment already bumping SmackDown to peak levels with over 9.5 million viewers, Rock left the arena in a limousine to leave the faction searching for Austin for the next hour in a series of backstage skits from different locations all over the building, starting with Austin-related hints until ending up finding a live rattlesnake in their locker room. Rock returned to the building to open SmackDown's final quarter, just as the faction went to the ring, calling out both Austin and Rock to not wait for Sunday, as Rock came out saying that he always keeps his promises, introducing Austin on a forklift in the parking lot with a final hype promo for Backlash before blowing up the DX bus, as SmackDown broke every record in its history with a 5.4 rating and over 8.7 million viewers overall, with the final quarter for the Rock-Austin faction payoff segment jumping huge to a record 6.6 rating with over 10.6 million viewers. WCW's Nitro forever changed the way wrestling television was done, turning what was once primarily used as a promotional tool to advertise for house shows and pay-per-views, into major weekly standalone events that will sell out any arena in the world, with its creation kickstarting the biggest boom period the business has ever seen, as we're looking at the 10 most watched Nitro shows in its history. In what would be the final WCW victory on Monday nights, the replay of the Goldberg vs. Page Havoc pay-per-view match saw WCW peaking at record levels on the back of the highest-rated quarter in cable TV history with a 7.2 rating and over 7.8 million viewers, beating Raw by a record 3.9 rating points. The rest of the head-to-head period saw the follow-up of the Hall vs. Nash and Hogan vs. Warrior pay-per-view matches, with Warrior coming out in the third hour to take out NWO Hollywood, bumping the show to a 4.6 rating, along with an NWO vs. Wolfpack tag match in the same quarter, closing the show with a Bret Hart vs. Page US title main event going 11 minutes, with WCW drawing one of its highest opposed ratings in history with a 5.1. The Wolfpack were on a private jet on the way to the Reunion Arena in Dallas to open the first hour on January 25, 1999, kicking Curt Hennig out of the group in the airport before driving to the building, closing the first hour drawing over 6 million viewers with a Scott Hall vs. Bigelow ladder match ending with a Goldberg double spear to a huge reaction. With Raw coming off the Rumble pay-per-view a day earlier, WCW had a loaded show with every major name in hyped matches or show-long angles, as along with the Hall Bigelow match, WCW had Bret Hart vs. Booker, Ric Flair putting Eric Bischoff in the merchandise stand, and Goldberg vs. Scott Norton jumping over 900,000 viewers to a peak 5.5 rating. After one of the most competitive Mondays in history, with both shows trading viewership victories in every quarter, WCW headlined with a big Wolfpack vs. Horsemen 6-man tag match jumping over 700,000 viewers to a 5.3 rating, closing out the biggest month in Monday Night Wars history in January '99 with another 5 overall rating. A week after the reformation of the NWO at the Georgia Dome, WCW had a massive boost of interest for the follow-up with Thunder during the week, jumping to its highest rating in 5 months, and the first hour tonight drawing its highest rating in history with a 5.9 rating and over 6.8 million viewers, peaking with a massive 6.4 rating for the footage of the hyped Flair-Bischoff meeting at the WCW headquarters in Flair's second week in charge of the company. 4 minutes from 9 p.m. the Wolfpack's limousine arrived to the building to open the first opposed quarter, with the Hells Angels as the backup group, coming out for a promo to hype several matches for tonight, drawing a 5 rating, with WCW peaking during the head-to-head hours with a 5.5 rating and over 6.1 million viewers for a Scott Steiner vs. Dallas Page US title match going 10 minutes. WCW loaded up the final hour with 3 high-profile matches in addition to short Goldberg interview clips talking about the events of the past 2 weeks, having Scott Hall vs. Bigelow, Ric Flair vs. Curt Hennig, and the main event with a spot in the NWO on the line with Nash vs. Giant and Paul White's final match in the company, with WCW continuing the strong momentum from the last week, drawing another near-record opposed 5 rating. With Warrior's return last week adding to the already peaking Goldberg and both NWO groups, along with coming off the most mainstream exposure in company history over the last month, August 24, 1998 saw WCW drawing the biggest rating in Monday Night War's history, even going against one of the most loaded draw shows of all time 6 days from SummerSlam. WCW set up the main event throughout the first hour, with Nash and Goldberg agreeing to team up against Hogan and Giant, with the hour overall drawing a record 5.5 rating. Warrior came out near the top of the hour for his follow-up promo after the return segment, bumping WCW over 700,000 viewers to a 5.4 rating and a quarter, which also included a Lex Luger vs. Bryan Adams match. The entrances for the Big Tag Match main event took place at 10:40 p.m. with the match gaining big to a near-record 6.5 rating and over 7 million viewers, before jumping further, crossing over 11 p.m. into the overrun to peak at a record audience of over 8.2 million viewers for the show-closing brawl, with Nitro ending the broadcast with a record 5.2 overall rating. 7 days after the 83-week winning streak was ended by Raw, WCW for the first time since mid-96 was coming to Monday on the losing side, with a loaded show planned for the response to gain back the lead, having both Goldberg and Hogan challenging Raven and Savage for the US and World titles on the night. After catching fire in the last few months, Goldberg was placed for the biggest drawing test of his career to date in the crossover segment just as Raw went on the air, with the match cementing Goldberg as a future megastar, drawing the biggest opening quarter in history with a 5.7 rating to beat Raw by a 2 rating points margin, with the gap between the shows growing even further 2 hours later, with Savage vs. Hogan obliterating Raw by nearly 3 rating points in the final quarter. The Savage-Hogan title match coming a day after the official split of the NWO, with Hogan and Nash turning on each other, went 16 minutes in the main event, jumping huge with over 2.3 million viewers to an all-time record 6.5 rating and over 7.3 million viewers, leading to WCW not only taking back the lead by beating Raw again, but drawing the biggest rating in the history of the Monday competition with a 5.1. In one of the most hyped weeks of television in industry history, WCW, in front of a record crowd at the Georgia Dome, built the show on the Goldberg vs. Nash Starrcade '98 rematch, along with Hulk Hogan's farewell appearance and Ric Flair's first night as the new president, targeting the night to set new milestones in the building and on television, which happened in both cases. WCW started with an all-time record viewership for the first hour, drawing a 6.7 million viewers, showing the increased interest on the night for both companies, with more viewers than ever tuning in on both channels, opening with Ric Flair's first segment since taking control in a confrontation with Eric Bischoff, putting him as a commentator for the night. After starting the show long angle at 9 p.m. with Goldberg taken out by police just as Hogan arrived to the stadium, WCW's biggest quarter came at 9:45 p.m. for the 2 segments setting up the new main event of Nash vs. Hogan, first with Nash making the challenge with Flair officially booking the match, and then Hogan making his TV return after almost 2 months out to accept it, bumping the show over 800,000 viewers to a 5.1 rating. The Hogan vs. Nash match, which included the reunion of the Outsiders with Scott Hall coming out in a Wolfpack shirt along with the finger poke swerve, and post-match Goldberg vs. NWO brawl, saw WCW having one of the biggest viewership spikes of all time, jumping over 2.6 million viewers in total to a 6.5 rating and over 7.6 million viewers, with WCW overall setting a record opposed audience with the biggest viewership during a head-to-head week in show history. In the second consecutive unopposed week after breaking all viewership records last Monday, WCW had another chance to draw a near-record audience with the head-to-head battle resuming next week. WCW opened fast with Hogan running backstage after Warrior attacked members of NWO Hollywood, going to the ring to call him out to lead to the show closing angle, with Hogan returning to the ring almost 3 hours later with Giant as protection, ending up with Warrior appearing out of nowhere to lay them out for the finish. Nitro peaked in the final half hour between the 6 to 6.2 rating range and over 7 million viewers, first with a Kurt Hennig vs Dean Malenko cage match ending with Arn Anderson running in for the save to a big reaction to build to Flair's TV return next Monday, along with a Wolfpack vs Piper and Page tag match in the Hogan-Warrior confrontation. With the company peaking in every department to start 1998, all records were expected to be shattered when a spring break special hyped for weeks was set to go unopposed on March 16, with Raw airing a day later on Tuesday. The full NWO opened the show while in the background talks were going on legit issues in the group, with Hall and Nash confronting Bischoff a few days earlier, setting up the main event of Hogan and Savage teaming up against Sting and Luger a day after headlining the uncensored pay-per-view against each other, with viewership growing steadily throughout the show, jumping over 600,000 viewers to a 5.7 rating at the top of the hour for Randy Savage's arrival for a confrontation with Bischoff regarding the tag match and him taking over the NWO from Hogan. The third hour saw WCW entering record territory never reached before in cable TV history, with the entire hour averaging a 6.3 rating, peaking in a loaded final quarter featuring Hall and Nash coming out in spring break mood to call out Giant, ending with them thrown in the pool in a comedic segment, and the main event tag match with Sting making a spectacular entrance from an helicopter and Hogan and Savage turning on each other throughout, jumping to a 6.6 rating and over 7.3 million viewers. With the wrestling audience increasing to levels never seen before to start 1999, WCW going unopposed on February 8 was expected to approach record numbers, with a chance to get regular Raw viewers to sample the product for the first time in months. WCW jumped over 1 million viewers at 9 p.m. with a Ric Flair-Bret Hart segment to set up a Bret vs Piper US title match for later tonight, jumping to a 6.2 rating and over 7 million viewers in the crossover segment when Raw usually goes on the air, with Flair also involved in a show-long angle of him putting Eric Bischoff in charge of cleaning the facility in the building. Other major segments during the second hour saw Bigelow call out Goldberg to hype their Super Brawl pay-per-view match, with the quarter picking up over 600,000 viewers to a 6.1 rating, along with a Page Scotch tying parking lot brawl that turned into a major heat angle in the build for the pay-per-view match, with Scott throwing Kimberly off the car. WCW's main event saw Hall and Nash against Flair and Mongo going 11 minutes, peaking in the overrun with a 6.5 rating and over 7.3 million viewers to end with Hogan and Goldberg out for the show-closing brawl. After drawing the biggest rating in Monday Night Wars history last week while going head-to-head with Raw, all indications pointed to WCW going unopposed a week later to smash all previous records and reach the biggest television audience for a wrestling broadcast since the WWF's NBC specials almost a decade earlier. Nitro started with a Hogan promo in a segment with Warrior and a continuation of the build-up to the Hogan-Warrior rematch, with Warrior continuing to be featured throughout the show chasing after the NWO, along with two other promo segments in the first hour, first with the Wolfpack and then with Arn Anderson teasing a return to the ring to reform the Horsemen in the build to Flair's return. WCW picked up huge in the second hour to a 6.6 overall rating, the highest rated hour in cable TV history, peaking with a Roddy Piper Dallas Page promo drawing a 6.8 rating and over 7.6 million viewers, with WCW loading up the final half hour with Goldberg vs Green and a main event tag of Hogan and Bret against Sting and Luger going 11 minutes, as Nitro broke every overall viewership record in history with the first ever show to enter the 6 rating range. Raw was the show that changed the entire business model of the industry, from its early days as the first weekly primetime program to the all-time peak of the business during the Monday Night Wars, all the way to being the primary revenue source for the company during its popularity decline in the 2010s on, as we're looking at the top 10 most watched Raw shows in its 30-year history. A day after an all-time record pay-per-view at WrestleMania 16, Raw had one of its biggest audiences in history tuning in for the follow-up after a swerve of McMahon turning heel on Rock in the main event. with the show opening huge from the first quarter with a 6.8 rating and over 8.5 million viewers, the highest for a regular Raw broadcast in history. The McMahons opened the show for Vince's heel turn explanation promo, followed by Rock arriving to the Staples Center minutes later, setting up the main event with Rock against one of Vince, Triple H or Shane. With WCW having a recap show in preparation for the Russo-Bischoff regime starting next week, Raw saw its viewership staying steady for the entire 2 hours, featuring several post-Mania matches including Big Show vs Rikishi, 2 title matches with Jericho vs Eddie and Benoit vs Taz, along with a segment of the 3 teams that elevated their career in the tag team ladder match. Rock's first promo since last night came at around 10:30 p.m. in a different demeanor, promising to take out the McMahons tonight, with the Rock vs Shane match going 5 minutes in the main event, picking up over 1.7 million viewers to a peak 7.6 rating and over 9.8 million viewers, ending with Rock pinning Triple H to close the show. The most unique Raw show to date took place on May 24, 1999, with the industry still in shock a day after one of the biggest tragedies in its history. With the WWF already in the mainstream headlines due to its unprecedented popularity and cable TV dominance, the news and the circumstances of Owen's death took the media coverage to levels perhaps never seen before, with wrestlers from both main companies all over television in the week following. Raw, which usually opened strong and built its viewership as the show went on to the payoff in the second hour, saw a completely different viewing pattern on the night, with the entire audience already tuning in from the first minute of the show, opening the first quarter with a 7.3 rating, the highest rated opening segment in Raw history for the company and talent roster, paying tribute to Owen with a 10-bell salute as the announcers introduced viewers to a show unlike any other before it. Raw stayed in the same range from start to finish with no major drops or bumps as viewers enter. Again, the unique broadcast was steady throughout, opening with a 7.3 rating and also ending with a 7.3, with both Rock and Austin making their first appearances of the night in the 5-minute overrun, with Rock cutting a tribute promo to Owen before a quick match with Val Venis along with Austin's salute to close the show. The WWF started the road to WrestleMania 16 a day after the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, with Raw already growing to a 6.8 rating and over 9 million viewers 15 minutes in for Rumble winner Rock's follow-up promo with Big Show and Hunter, recapping his street fight with Cactus Jack and hyping the upcoming Rock vs Triple H Mania main event. Raw also featured the TV debut of Taz in a segment with Kurt Angle, coming in perfect timing as after debuting last night in the Garden, his first Raw show came in the other ECW territory of Philadelphia, seeing the crowd starting big ECW chants during the Angle Taz brawl. Raw's main event started already past 11 p.m. into the overrun, seeing Rock in a handicap match against Show and Hunter going 4 minutes before interferences from Rikishi, DX and Foley, peaking the night with a 7.5 rating, with Raw overall drawing its biggest numbers in months. A day after an all-time great fully loaded pay-per-view, Raw jumped big for the follow-up of the event, starting with Mick Foley booking a Rock and Kane vs Angle and Benoit tag match for the main event. Raw's boosted interest on the night saw the overall second hour jumping huge to one of the biggest hours in show history, doing a 7.5 rating with over 9.2 million viewers, with no quarter during the hour dropping below a 7.3, featuring the follow-up segments of the Angle vs Taker and Hunter vs Jericho pay-per-view matches, along with a 3-way tag and a Trish vs Lita strap match. Rock and Kane against Benoit and Angle went 9 minutes in the main event, doing the show's quarter-high 7.7 rating and then jumping further to one of the biggest peak numbers of all time for the finish, drawing an 8.4 rating with over 10.3 million viewers, ending up with Shane's new crew of Benoit, Show and Angle taking out Rock and Kane to close the show. coming off the King of the Ring pay-per-view with Rock pinning Vince in the six-man tag to win the title, closing out the McMahon-Helmsley regime program as Rock opened Raw. Five-time WWF champion before Vince came out to announce that he's going home, officially ending the faction storyline with Rock sending him off TV with a rock bottom, on the same night that Mick Foley would make his TV return for the first time since WrestleMania to fill the void as the new commissioner. Foley's reveal segment, which featured Shawn Michaels, Triple H and Kurt Angle, bumped Raw from a 6.4 into the 7 rating range to open the second hour, setting up a three-way #1 contender for the main event with Rock, Hunter and new King of the Ring Kurt Angle, with the match going 9 minutes, picking up over 1.5 million viewers to an 8 rating with over 10.6 million viewers, previewing their eventual SummerSlam main event over a month later. 13 days from King of the Ring, the main event build-up continued with Rock starting Raw in front of 17,000 at the Kiel Center in St. Louis, calling out all involved from Taker and Kane to the faction, ending up with Kane coming out first to take the challenge and set up Rock vs. Kane for the main event. The McMahons came out in the final quarter just before the main event after going through a series of matches all night, with Linda booking Vince and Shane against the Dudleys in a tables match, and Triple H defending the belt against Jericho in an 8-minute match, jumping big to a quarter-high 7.7 rating, hyping the King of the Ring main event tag with all staying at ringside for the match. Rock and Kane came out a few minutes before 11 p.m. with the match going into the overrun, picking up over 1 million viewers to a peak 8 rating with over 10 million viewers, ending up with Taker coming out and all three taking out the faction while laying out Triple H for the finish. 24 hours after a 1-hour Iron Man match at Judgment Day, which also featured the return of Undertaker after over 8 months, Vince opened Raw bragging about last night's results while telling the crowd that Rock might not show up, booking him against all members of DX in a handicap match if he arrives to the building. Moments later, Rock was walking behind McMahon on the way to his limousine, taking him out and sending him away as the first target for the night, starting one of the memorable show-long angles in history with Rock taking out the entire faction throughout the show in the build to the main event segment. As Raw, which went unopposed all night due to WCW starting an hour earlier, started and remained over the 7 rating and 8 million viewers range for the rest of the night. Rock finally came out for the response promo on last night's finish with 15 minutes to go in the broadcast, telling Triple H that they made history last night in an all-time great match, but he didn't win the title as he never beat him, turning to Undertaker saying that he did the right thing but at the wrong time. Hunter came out saying that they lit the industry on fire but he's the one with the belt, as Rock called him to the ring to start the brawl with the entire faction returning. Undertaker arrived moments later to another huge reaction, making his TV return since September '99, as Rock and Taker took out the faction with Rock laying out Hunter to close one of the hottest Raw shows of all time, with the final segment, which started at a 7.6 rating, then jumped over 1.8 million viewers to a huge 8.6, peaking with over 10.5 million viewers, with Raw overall drawing a near-record 7.1 rating. After one of the biggest spectacles of all time to end last night's Backlash pay-per-view, the company concluded a record-breaking month on May 1st with every viewership milestone on target for the follow-up on the night. Rock arrived to open Raw's second hour at 10 p.m., gaining over half of the WCW audience, picking up Raw to a near-record 7.9 rating for his first title win promo after a year-long title chase, setting up the main event with Rock vs. Shane in a title cage match, with Raw already at over 9.3 million viewers for the Rock-McMahon confrontation. Rock and Shane came out in the final quarter, bumping the show to a near-record 8.3 rating for the first half of the match, the second highest quarter hour on an opposed night in Raw history, only behind the This Is Your Life segment on September 27, '99. The Rock vs. Shane match crossed over into the overrun, gaining over 1.5 million viewers to a 9.1 rating and over 10.8 million viewers, the most watched match in Raw and cable TV history, closing out the record night with Raw drawing the biggest rating in Monday Night Tour's history with a 7.4 overall. 6 days from Backlash 2000, with everything set in place for one of the biggest shows in company history, Rock and Vince McMahon were set for the final hype promos on the night, with Vince, after being off television in the past week, arriving to the building to open Raw's second hour for his first response promo on Rock and Austin teaming up on Sunday. Vince recapped the last week, talking about Austin and Rock's history, trying to stir things up and turn them on each other by bringing up incidents from the past when both were fighting for the top spot in the company, with the segment picking up huge with the vast majority of the WCW audience tuning into Raw when going off the air, bumping Raw to a near-record 8.1 rating with over 10.2 million viewers. Half an hour later, Rock responded to Vince's promo saying that maybe him and Austin should not fully trust each other, but both know that they should never trust McMahon. Closing the final hype to Backlash with the main event of Rock and Jericho against Hunter and Benoit coming up next, going 7 minutes with the match along with Rock's pre-match promo jumping over 1.6 million viewers to peak the night at an 8.6 rating and over 10.7 million viewers, one of the top 3 highest viewerships ever recorded in show history, as Raw overall drew an all-time record opposed rating with a 7.2 rating, with Raw's second hour on the back of the McMahon-Rock promos and main event tag match, became the most watched hour of Raw in history, with the first ever hour of weekly WWF television to reach the 10 million viewers mark for the full hour. With the WWF already shattering new milestones by the week when going head-to-head with WCW, when the schedule showed that Raw will go unopposed on May 10, 1999, the question was how high it can get, as when numbers came out the following day all expectations were surpassed, with the show drawing not only an all-time wrestling viewership record, but one of the biggest numbers in cable TV history overall. Raw, which started with a show-long angle of the corporate ministry versus the Union, jumped over 1.3 million viewers in the second quarter to a 7.8 rating for the factions confrontation, along with Shawn Michaels' return to book the loaded card for tonight, and from that point never fell below the previously unheard of 8 rating range. The show was building to a big star power 6-man tag on top, with Rock and Austin being held off to make their first appearance of the night nearly 2 hours into the broadcast to maximize the main event rating, as the Vince, Rock and Austin vs. Shane Taker and Hunter match jumped to a peak 9.2 rating with over 10.4 million viewers, with both figures all-time records, as Raw overall broke every previous record in history with an 8.1 rating, leading to the company getting massive media coverage on the number in the days following in what went down as the highest rated and most watched Raw show of all time.